I'll talk a little bit about where we are in the project, but it's an open source project. It's designed to be embeddable across multiple audio applications, regardless of platform. So, this slide builds. Yeah. I'm a little behind.
It'll take a little bit to queue up.
Then it'll go ahead. All right, so I'll wait 1 second and I'll try to talk to this. So over there on the left, it's supposed to be an iPhone. That's just one example of where an online audio listening application might be. And the log sits, the ubiquitous cloud is to suggest that these aren't actually together. It's living somewhere else, and that's probably the most important key trait to start right off with, is that the log is separate and distinct from the application. So the best analogy here is kind of like Google Analytics, where you've got something living on the application and it's writing the data somewhere else. The key piece here being that with something like Google Analytics, the person who puts the tag on their site is the one that goes and takes advantage of the data. But here we've got something quite different. The log is designed to be controlled completely by the user. So the piece that's put on the application is writing to a log that can only be viewed by the user, and the user can choose what to do with it. In fact, they can choose whether even to have the data be written into that log. And that control includes its portability. And this is obviously a critical piece for those familiar with data portability, which is probably a lot more than I'm familiar with it. But it opens up the possibility for this to not fall into a trap of being a silo. It is much more likely going to be something like, hopefully, something like email based on a set of protocols rather than Facebook based on a proprietary silo, where you could move this around, because of course the code that writes to the log and the format and structure of the log itself is all open. So theoretically anybody could build a log with an application that writes to it. Individuals can view, share, and delete their own data at its very simplest level. You might come in and look at your own listening history, which basic isn't terribly compelling, but it opens up the door for you to potentially share your information with other people. So Doc talked about fourth-party services, and in this case, they would be completely on behalf of the user. And you can imagine things like the ability to search your own listening history, the ability to provide recommendations based on what you listen to, the ability ultimately to do things like transactions and purchases based on what you listen to, what you want to buy, and what you want to support in the way of media. And finally, perhaps most importantly, is the ability for other applications to write to this log. So you see a diagram, like in this case, something like Pandora. So multiple online applications writing to a single log. Suddenly you see the user at the center of the diagram. This is really an example of user as the point of integration. You can imagine actually the audio listening is a really good example for point of integration. We generally don't listen to our audio in one place, in one application. We bounce around quite a bit. So we're the natural hub for that sort of information. And right now, if I want an audio recommendation, all the recommendation services are generally built into a single silo. So functionality like this, with the user as the point of integration, opens up all sorts of potential fourth-party services for providing things that span all of my vendor silos. So what we're really trying to do is not build essentially a piece of VRM functionality. We're trying to enable VRM functionality to exist by putting some data into the user's control. And it's important to point out that we're actually creating a copy of the data, more or less. So we're not requiring that application that lives over in the phone sort of give up control over their own data or what they want to do with the information. We're just essentially creating a mechanism that allows the users to create a copy of their own activity and do things with it. Finally, and perhaps obviously, we're starting with something very simple, listening data. We don't have to worry about multi-formats. We don't have to worry about multiple vendors and verticals. We can really focus on something very specific. It's probably obvious we're trying to start small here. But this activity recording and sharing can clearly be extended beyond listening data and can be more akin to things like social network activity streams, transaction history, and other media logging events as well. Really quickly, where we are with our project status, it's not built yet. We do have some initial funding. Some of it's actually formalized through the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, funding an organization called PRX, and then through the Berkman Center to fund Doc working on this. But also we have some verbal commitment from the Cerner Foundation, and we're going to launch a crowdfunded aspect on Kickstarter.com. If people aren't familiar with it, it's a pretty neat site that allows you to crowdfund projects like software projects. Our initial deployment, and perhaps most excitingly, is in the public radio tuner. We have commitment from the collaboration to do so, and some initial funding from the funder to do so. The public radio tuner is currently in version 1.2. There are about 1.5 million downloads. How many people have either seen or have the public radio tuner on their iPhone? Okay, so 7 or 8 people just in this room. So it's quite good penetration of this application. And I don't know if it still is beating out Pandora on the iPhone, but it was for about a month. We currently stream over 300 US public radio stations, but the next version of the tuner will have all sorts of on-demand audio, program guides, and other really exciting stuff. The first release of ListenLog focuses really on minimal functionality and footprint. We're trying to get quick to market. We're trying not to tackle really big decisions. However, we do have to carve off some difficult decisions, like things like format and how we handle identity and authentication, and that's some of the places where we need some help. So we need programmers, we need folks to help us with the identity layer, and I bet you there's a bunch of people here that can help me with that. So yes. So here's my contact information again.